So here's a question for you. How can a country sitting on top of the largest proven oil reserves on the entire planet suffer one of the worst economic collapses in modern history? That is the great paradox of Venezuela. To really wrap our heads around this, we're not going to start with oil rigs or economic charts. No, we're going to start in a public square in the capital, Caracas, with a really powerful symbol of a nation's broken promise. Now, this isn't just any old clock. It was built way back in 1803 by the legendary scientist Alexander von Humboldt. I mean, this thing is a piece of national heritage, a symbol of precision, of potential, sitting right there on the equator.
But today, well, not only is it off by nearly an hour after a botched reinstallation, but it's literally overshadowed by a newer political monument. It's just such a perfect, almost tragic symbol of mismanagement, where historic treasures are just neglected and, well, obscured.
And that question right there is what we're digging into today. Because just like that sundial, Venezuela's unbelievable oil wealth, another piece of national patrimony, has been mismanaged and overshadowed, leading to a crisis that's almost hard to comprehend. To really get a sense of the scale here, let's look at the hard numbers. Because, they really do paint a shocking picture of what could have been versus what actually is. Let's just let that number sink in. 303 billion barrels. That is more than Saudi Arabia, more than Canada, more than any other nation on Earth. This isn't just a little bit of oil wealth. This is the foundation of a potential economic superpower, a resource so huge it should, by all rights, guarantee prosperity. And this is where the paradox just becomes so painfully clear. Despite having all that oil in the ground, actually getting it out has become a huge problem. Production has just cratered, falling from 2.4 million barrels a day in 2013 to less than a million today. It's all thanks to this toxic cocktail of underinvestment, technical failures, and absolutely crippling sanctions. The effect of that production collapse has been, well, catastrophic. We're talking about a 75% wipeout of the entire economy. I mean, to put that in perspective, that's one of the most severe economic downturns in modern history for any country that isn't actively at war. It's just unimaginable. So the big question is, how on earth did this happen? Let's walk through a quick timeline to see how this crisis unfolded, step by step. This didn't happen overnight. It was a cascade of events. It started back in the 70s with a massive oil boom, which led to the whole industry being nationalized. All that wealth was put in the hands of the state. Fast forward to 1999, and Hugo Chavez's government basically made the entire country's political and economic future totally dependent on that oil money. But that dependency left the economy incredibly vulnerable. So when oil prices crashed hard in 2014, it was a disaster. Then came the final blow: intensified U.S. sanctions targeting the very heart of the economy, creating the perfect storm we see today. Now, as things got worse internally, Venezuela wasn't in a vacuum. It actually became this critical chessboard for global powers, all with very different competing interests. What's happening on the global stage is this really fascinating clash of strategies. On one side, you've got the United States applying maximum pressure. Sanctions on oil, finance, you name it, all to try and force political change. And then on the other side, you have China and Russia, who've thrown an economic lifeline, working to protect their own massive investments by giving loans and helping Venezuela get around those very same sanctions. And their support, it's not just about short-term politics. No, this is a calculated long-term economic and geopolitical play. For them, it's all about securing access to the world's largest oil reserves and getting a strategic foothold right in America's backyard. They're protecting their investments, basically, just waiting for things to stabilize, no matter who ends up in charge. So with all of this going on, the economic collapse, the political turmoil, the international pressure, what does it actually mean for the people living there? Well, it's had a staggering and deeply personal impact. The human cost is it's mind-boggling. Over 7.7 million people have fled the country. Just think about that for a second. That's more people than the entire population of Switzerland, all displaced. It's created one of the biggest migration crises on the entire planet, and it's reshaping communities all across Latin America and beyond. So what's next? Well, looking ahead, the situation is not getting any simpler. In fact, the stage is set for a highly volatile time, with multiple flashpoints that could make the crisis even worse. What makes the future so shaky is this dangerous mix of threats. First, you've got renewed external pressure from the U.S., including seizing oil tankers. Then, regionally, a long-dormant border dispute with neighboring Guyana is flaring up. all because of massive new oil discoveries. And all the while, internally, the economy is still on a knife edge with the constant threat of hyperinflation. And so, this brings us right back to where we started, to that broken sundial in Caracas. A nation's incredible potential, its immense wealth, was supposed to chart a clear, prosperous future. But after decades of crisis, the biggest question of all is still unanswered. Can this clock ever be fixed to tell the right time again?